Have you ever stopped and wondered what's really going on inside your head when someone takes a medicine for something like anxiety or depression? It can feel like a total black box, right? Well, today we're going to pry open that box and take a look inside. We're demystifying the science of hacking the brain. So let's get right to it. How do these drugs actually work their magic? How can one tiny little pill completely change your mood or stop a seizure in its tracks? To really get it, we're going to need a simple but really powerful analogy.
I want you to picture this. Your brain and your spinal cord, what we call the central nervous system, is basically the electrical grid for a huge, sprawling city. It's this incredibly complex web of wires and signals that powers literally everything you do, think, and feel.
Yeah, this grid is the master control unit for your entire body. It's running the show 24/7, handling everything from your breathing to your deepest thoughts and emotions. It's the juice behind the whole operation. Now, when that grid is humming along perfectly, signals are flowing, the lights are on, the city is thriving. But what happens when things go wrong? Well, you might get a massive uncontrolled power surge, which is a pretty good way to think about a seizure. Or you could have a brownout where the power just isn't getting where it needs to go. And that's a lot like depression. And that's where the electricians come in. In our story, drugs are the highly specialized technicians who know how to fix these glitches in the grid. And to understand how they do what they do, we need to look at two basic principles of pharmacology. First up, we've got pharmacokinetics. I know it's a mouthful, but the idea is actually super simple. It's just the story of a drug's journey through your body. Basically, it answers the question, what does the body do to the drug? And that journey always has four main parts. First, the drug has to be absorbed into your system. Then it's distributed to where it needs to go, our technician finding the right power station. After that, your liver starts to metabolize it, breaking it down. And finally, whatever's left is excreted. Every single one of these drugs has to run that exact same gauntlet to do its job. Okay, but here comes the really cool part, pharmacodynamics. This is the other side of the coin. It asks, what does the drug do to the body? This is how our little electrician actually gets in there and starts flipping switches and rerouting power in the brain. So, how do they flip those switches? Well, picture this. Your nerve cells are covered in these tiny little docking stations called receptors. Think of them like a bunch of locks. The drugs are designed to be like specific keys. When the right key finds the right lock and clicks into place, it triggers a change inside that cell. And that's it. That's how a tiny pill creates such a huge effect. Now, if we zoom out, these drugs pretty much fall into two main camps. You've got your central nervous system depressants. These are the dimmers. They slow everything down. And then you've got your CNS stimulants, the power boosters, which, you guessed it, ramp everything up. Let's tackle the dimmers first. So if the problem is that the grid is just overactive, right? Too much electricity is flowing, causing things like anxiety or seizures, you need to find a way to just dim the lights. And that is exactly what CNS depressants are designed to do. The approach is really logical. You match the tool to the specific problem. If the grid is crackling with anxiety, you might use a benzodiazepine, like Xanax. For those abnormal electrical surges we call seizures, an anti-epileptic is the tool for the job. And for something like insomnia or anesthesia, you bring in the heavy hitters, the barbiturates. Each one is a specialized tool for a specific kind of electrical fault. But here's what's so fascinating about how they work. They don't just go in and cut the power. Your brain already has its own natural calming system, a built-in dimmer switch called the GABA receptor. What these drugs do is they latch onto that switch and just make it better. They amplify its natural calming effect. They're basically boosting your body's own braking system. Pretty clever, right? Okay, so that's how we dim the lights. But what if the problem is the exact opposite? What if you're dealing with a brownout? What if you need to boost the power to get those signals flowing properly again? Well, that's where stimulants and antidepressants enter the picture. And once again, it's all about matching the right tool to the job. For that brownout of depression, antidepressants can help boost key signals related to mood. For Parkinson's, which is caused by a lack of a chemical called dopamine, doctors use a drug called levodopa. Now, this is seriously smart. Levodopa is a precursor that sneaks past the brain's security system, and then it converts into the dopamine the brain so desperately needs. And then you have something like schizophrenia, which is actually linked to too much dopamine. So here, the tool works differently. It blocks certain circuits to get the system back in balance. So for a common antidepressant, the mechanism is really elegant. What these drugs do is they essentially act like little traffic cops. They stand in the gap between your nerve cells, that's the synaptic cleft, and they stop your brain from cleaning up mood-boosting chemicals too quickly. This keeps those chemicals around for longer, giving them more time to deliver their signal. It's like turning up the volume on a signal that was just too quiet. But, and this is a really important but, not all power boosts are helpful. While antidepressants are trying to fine-tune the system, other substances cause massive, uncontrolled power surges. Things like cocaine or LSD, they don't fine-tune anything. They just hijack the grid and crank it up to dangerous levels, which is exactly why they are so often abused. And this brings us to what might be the most critical point of all. These pharmacological tools are unbelievably powerful. They literally have the power to build a life back up and the power to completely destroy it. Think about it. On one hand, these drugs are absolutely vital. They help people manage conditions that would otherwise be completely debilitating. They give people their lives back. But on the other hand, the risk of abuse, especially with the stimulants, is just immense. So the whole goal here is to figure out how to use all that amazing therapeutic power while doing everything we can to avoid the harm. And that harm is very, very real. Just to put a number on it, the source material mentions that cocaine alone is abused by more than 3 million people every single day. That's the mind-boggling scale of the problem when these powerful tools fall into the wrong hands. So that's the tightrope we're walking. We have these incredible keys that can help repair the most complex machine in the known universe, but they can also cause so much damage. The real question isn't just how these drugs work anymore. As we get better and better at hacking our own brains, the question becomes, how do we make sure we harness all this incredible power for good?